Hello and welcome to New Ways. This is our fifth video in the series of Prelims PYQ discussions where we discuss all the Prelims questions from 2014 to 2023. Our theme for today is Mauryan history. We have 4 questions for discussion and we'll start with the first question from 2022 Prelims. The question is on Arthashastra. It has 3 options and a set of option combinations. The statements are: a person could be a slave as a result of judicial punishment. The first statement. Second statement, if a female slave bore her master's son, she was legally free. The third statement, if a son born to a female slave was fathered by the master, the son was entitled to the legal status of the master's son. Now, this is a very factual question. You have very limited scope of applying your logic here, because you have to specifically know the nature of this text, Arthashastra, and you have to know what exactly the text talks about slavery in particular. Now, if you know the text of Arthashastra, it's a text on statesmanship, it is a text on conducting a polity, on kingship, something similar to the Prince written by Machiavelli. And with respect to things like slavery, prostitution, justice, it has very specific norms. And it's very difficult to differentiate what it sets right and what it says is wrong. Now let's take these questions as factual and let's discuss the answer key. If you look at how Arthashastra deals with slavery, it says that there are only 2 ways of person to become a slave for life. That is, if that person voluntarily enslaves himself as a slave, and then he runs away, he will be enslaved for life. So voluntary enslavement is a serious thing, first. Second, if that person's life has been mortgaged by others and he runs away, he will be a slave for life. So it's about being a slave by voluntary declaration or by getting mortgaged and running away. If that person is running away, then he is a slave for life. But judicial punishment is not a category, and the option talks about judicial punishment, hence option A is incorrect. Now let's come to the other 2 options. It is with respect to woman and childbirth. So if a master uses a female slave to have a child, then both the child as well as the mother is recognized as free. So it is a thing of justice. Again, what I have told you, this text is about justice. Here you can see an element of justice in this. If the master is using his female slave for bearing a child, then both the child and the female slave is free. And to an extension to that, if the female slave was fathered by the master, then the son was entitled to the legal status of the master's son as well. So it's a little progressive as well in that sense. It punishes the master for something that he does. So this is the idea of slavery with respect to Arthashastra. If you know this part in particular only, you can answer this question. Otherwise, it's a very factual question from ancient India. Now let's move to the second question. It gives a very specific quote. And the question itself says that it's an inscription and it's by a ruler. And it asks you to identify which ruler is that. The inscription goes like this: whosoever praises his religious sect or blames other sects out of excessive devotion to his own sect with a view of glorifying his own sect, he rather injures his own sect very severely. Okay, so if you look at this quote in isolation, it seems like a quote that favors tolerance, right? Now, which ruler is associated with tolerance? You have Ashoka, you have Samudragupta, you have Harshavardhana, you have Krishnadevaraya. You know that Krishnadevaraya is known for art and aesthetics, is known as a king who is into literature and art, architecture, more aesthetic side of it. Then you have Harshavardhana, someone who has conquered, someone who is known to be defeated by Puligeshi. You have Samudragupta, who is known as the Indian Napoleon, is known for his conquest. Then you have Ashoka. It's a basic knowledge that Ashoka is known for his tolerance. You know the Kalinga War, the transformation he had, and the Dhamma he adopted after that. So just by using logic, you can connect this option more towards Ashoka. Unless this question is there to trick you, the answer is Ashoka. And if you look at the answer key, it is right. The inscription is from Ashoka's major rock edict 7 as well as 12. And I've already told you about the term Ashoka's Dhamma. Dhamma is nothing but rightful conduct. So Ashoka talks about a lot of things in that. He talks about being a fatherly figure for his subjects. So that was the whole idea of that. He was inspired by the teaching of Buddha. He was very secular in nature. He was very particular of respecting Brahmins, elders, all religious sects. He was even for non-violence. He restricted the slaughter of animals. So in that sense, this quote can be rightly attributed to Ashoka. Above all, this is a quote straight out of your textbook, NCERT textbook, Our Past, which is the history textbook of class 6. So it's important to refer to the NCERTs. So questions in 2020 has been asked directly out of it. Now let's move to the third question. It says, in which of the following relief sculpture inscriptions is Ranyo Ashoka, King Ashoka, mentioned along with stone portrait of Ashoka? Now, we are discussing Mauryan administration in this particular theme. So in the previous question as well, it's a direct guess for you that it is related to Ashoka. But if this question is there as a whole, along everything, it becomes a more confusing question. Let me put that clear. Now the question is, in which sculpture Ranyo Ashoka is mentioned? Here again, there is an element of factual nature in this question. Now, you know Sanchi Stupa, which is very clear, which is very famous, and something like a Ranyo Ashoka must have been there because there are NCERT textbooks that speaks extensively of the stupa. It talks about the Toranas, it talks about the sculptures in that, but something like this is unknown. So this is one option we can give less weightage to. Then you have Shahbazgiri, you don't have much idea about that. Then you have Shogura, that is also not that very frequent. Then you have Kankanahalli. The one thing with Kankanahalli, that too in 2019, is this was part of the current affairs because a stupa, a very famous stupa called the Sannati stupa, which is located near Kankanahalli, was in news because of some recent discovery. Sannati is one of the biggest stupas, and because of this was part of the current affairs, and all the small features of it was also coming in newspaper. And this question is directly related to that. So it cannot be called as a factual typical history question. It's more of a current affairs question, and the answer is option A. Kankanahalli, as I've told you, is in Gulbarga, Karnataka. It's about 3 kilometers from Sannati, where you have the biggest stupa, and that is where Ranyo Ashoka is carved. And there you can see the emperor with his queen and attendants sitting. So that's the answer. So as I've said, it's a current affairs based question. So history is not just from factual textbooks that you never know, it's also directly from NCERTs as well as from current affairs. Now we have the final question of the session. Very direct question from 2016 prelims to ask you, who of the following has first deciphered the edicts of Emperor Ashoka? Now for those who have read the NCERTs, it's a very short question because it's clearly mentioned. And this is a big thing because there was a term called Devanam Piya Piyadashi. This term was very frequent in most of the ancient Indian inscriptions. And none of the archaeologists could decipher who this person was. There was also other inscription that talked about Ashoka. So everybody knew Ashoka was a great emperor, but nobody knew who is this Devanam Piya Piyadashi. But this person called James Prinsep, he was working in a mint and he deciphered the Brahmi and Kharoshthi scripts. And most of the Ashokan inscriptions, as you know, is written in Brahmi and Kharoshthi. And he is the one who deciphered and identified both Ashoka and Piyadasi is one and the same. Piyadasi means beloved of gods. So once this discovery was made, a huge lot of evidence opened up with respect to Mauryan Empire as well as Ashoka. So Devanam Piya Piyadasi is Ashoka, and the person who deciphered it is James Prinsep. It took place in 1837. As I've told you, it's a straight question out of NCERT. So in conclusion, I would like to say that these questions are not coming from unknown sources, something very factual to you. They are coming from NCERTs directly. They are also coming with relation to current affairs. So that's it. We'll come up with yet another session on some other theme. Thank you for listening.